So today I want to talk about the coin that got me really heavily invested in cryptos. I mentioned in my first video that I got into this originally because of Bitcoin, but Ethereum is really what kept me. Watching the price ascend from $17 when I first noticed it to where it is now was really enough to keep me interested. My first purchase was for 1.4 ETH at $25 including fees, which put Ethereum at like 17 something a coin. If I had known then what I know now, I definitely would have invested more. But that just goes to show how quickly the prices changed in the year. So as much as I loved ETH and I really invested heavily in it, I have to admit that I didn't really know much about it for quite a long time. I just knew that the price kept going up and people kept talking about it and it was very popular. And so it felt sort of like a sure thing. I wanted to use this video to relay the information that took me a really long time to wrap my head around, because I think that the fundamentals and the usage of Ethereum is much more complex than Bitcoin, and it took me a long time to really grasp it. So I'd like to help others figure it out, because I know there's a gap of information there, and I'd like to bridge the gap. Ethereum was designed by Vitalik in 2013, and in 2014 the formal development of the Ethereum project was taken on by a Swiss company called the Ethereum Foundation. So development of ETH was funded by an online public crowd sale that went from like July to August of 2014. And then Ethereum went live in July 30th of 2015 with the 11.9 pre-mined coins from the crowd sale. Ethereum is defined as an open source, public, decentralized platform that combines the cryptocurrency Ether with a blockchain-based language that helps for developing computer programs. Those programs are called smart contracts. You've probably heard of them. It's a very popular term. And then the last component is an internal transaction fee that's used to allocate resources on the network, and that's called gas. You often hear Ether and Ethereum and ETH all get tossed around kind of in the same light, so it's really important to specify the difference. Ether is the coin that has a USD value associated with it, like Bitcoin, whereas Ethereum is the smart contract platform that Ether runs off of. So the big deal with Ethereum is the smart contracts. This is really what sets it apart from a lot of the other cryptocurrencies. A smart contract is a piece of code that's in the blockchain that has a certain set of rules associated with it. And when those rules are met, or those conditions are met, that smart contract will execute. So the big deal with smart contracts is they permit trusted transactions between parties that are anonymous. That means that they render transactions traceable, transparent, and irreversible. This hands-off approach prevents things like censorship, fraud, or third-party interference. Smart contracts also have a public address, so that means that it points to its location on the blockchain. These addresses not only store code, but they also store Ethereum like normal wallets that you or I have. So that means that you can think of a smart contract sort of like an Ethereum wallet that's being run by a computer and not by a human being. Since a smart contract has an address on the Ethereum network, what you do is you send it Ethereum, and at that point, once it receives it, it will execute whatever its job is on the blockchain. So a simple analogy that I found online was very helpful for me in kind of wrapping my head around what smart contracts are. If you compare it to a vending machine, it's a little bit easier to understand. So you go up to a vending machine and it says $2.50 for a bottle of soda, right? You put your money in the machine, you press the button, you get your soda back. In that vending machine, there's a code. If money received is $2.50 and button is pressed for Diet Coke, then release Diet Coke. And that's essentially all a smart contract is. So the next component of the Ethereum network is the blockchain. And that term is something that we hear incessantly, and that's because it's very important. A blockchain is basically just a giant distributed network that keeps record of things and is continuously growing. What makes the architecture of the blockchain so important is that it's not centralized to one or a few computers, or what are referred to as nodes. As I was recording this, and it may have changed, there was 21,389 nodes on the Ethereum network. So that means if a handful of computers or nodes or whatever it might be go out, the network still stands and stands strong because it's highly distributed. And the idea of this independent ecosystem is essentially really what the internet was based off of. So the blockchain is the internet. The Ethereum blockchain works by keeping track of the states of the blockchain, which is basically just keeping track of all of the information on all of the applications. That means all of the user's Ethereum balance, any of the smart contracts that might be stored in the code, and also what's the location that all these things are stored at. Like a bank account, Ether can be sent from one party to another, and the funds are always accounted for and they're on the network. Remember that every node on the Ethereum network holds a copy of the transaction history in the smart contract history. The goal here is that the network of nodes and miners take responsibility for the transactions rather than needing a third-party groups, like PayPal or something to validate it. So in a very real sense, Ethereum is a decentralized worldwide computer that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So what's the big deal? What's Ethereum capable of anyways? I'm glad you asked. With Ethereum, anyone can design his or her own cryptocurrency or decentralized application. Those applications or those cryptocurrencies would run on the Ethereum network as a token. So think like NEO. I use the example NEO as the Ethereum token, or ERC20 token, which is another name for it, because it's a very recognizable coin. And a lot of these coins want to give you an incentive to have and hold them because it strengthens their network, but incentivizing it makes people want to buy in more. So with NEO, if you stake NEO, you get gas from the wallet. And that's just one coin that's built on the Ethereum network. At this point, there's far too many to list. You can Google ERC20 tokens, and there's like a Wikipedia page for it. There's a huge list. I know because I did it. Another strength of the Ethereum network is the decentralized applications, or the dApps. It's a collection of one or more smart contracts that are grouped together to make a cohesive application. I found another analogy online that really simplifies what an ERC20 token is, and it really helped me understand it better as well. So think of a time you went to a water park as a kid. They take your money, they give you a wristband, right? And then with that wristband, you use that to gain access through the rides or for foods or whatever else while you're there for the day. In this example, the water park is the decentralized application, your money is the Ether, and the armband is the ERC20 token or the Ethereum token. You're using Ether to gain access to an Ethereum token that was built on the Ethereum network. Time for downsides. The biggest downside that I could find right now was the smart contracts. So they're written by human beings, and they're only going to be as good or as accurate as the human being that wrote them. Code bugs or errors can cause unintentional catastrophes within the network. We saw this with the DAO attack that happened in July of 2016. It was a digital decentralized autonomous organization. Took me a couple times to get that right. Basically, it was a big venture capitalist fund that wasn't operated by any one individual, but by a group of smart contracts. It was launched with $150 million through crowdfunding. Bad news was that the hackers found a way to infiltrate the smart contracts on the Ethereum network, and they hacked something like $50 million of investors' money. So this money was eventually restored in a few weeks after the hack, and they did this through a hard fork. So the reason Ethereum Classic exists is because that was the original Ethereum that was hacked, and so they hard forked off and they made the Ethereum that we know now. So something that I think is more of a deterrent than a downside is the fact that, well, you guys have probably noticed that the Ether price has been hanging out around 300 for what feels like an eternity. And so I think the issue here is that there was such an influx in ICOs that all that new fiat that was coming in wasn't going to ETH and it wasn't going to Bitcoin. It was going to invest in these ICOs. Obviously, this is just a theory of mine, but I have noticed that the markets have been moving a lot more lately, and I think that may have something to do with the fact that there has been less ICOs. I'm hoping the crypto community learns to better balance these things, because the ICOs is great progress for ETH, and having all of these new creative ideas and platforms come out is beneficial for crypto, but at the cost of ETH sitting stagnant. And for me, that's kind of aggravating because that's my one love and I really do like to trade it and watch it. So I hope that that's something that starts to resolve itself, or we start to see some ETH market movement. ETH did get up to like 325 last week, so I guess that's something. I'm also hoping that all this Bitcoin drama and Bitcoin Cash drama and the hashing power fight that they're having will lead people to get sick of that and maybe come back to ETH so that we see an influx in the price. Either way, I won't be selling any of my ETH, so it really doesn't matter. I do like when it dips though, because it gives me the opportunity to pick up more. So that being said, I hope this video helped clarify a little bit of the information related to Ethereum and the more confusing parts. There's other stuff that was a bit more in depth that I could have gone into related to the programming language and everything that it uses. But I didn't want to scare people off, and to be honest, it was a little dense even for me. So I figured to stick to the stuff that I understand, because I don't want to try to translate something that I don't get, obviously. So again, thanks for watching and thanks for stopping by. I'm going to leave my social media in the description. My Telegram and my Twitter are what I use the most if you want to get a hold of me. Come pop in and say hi, give me a recommendation or some feedback. Hopefully by the next video, this Bitcoin Cash thing is all figured out, and hopefully nobody loses too much money in the meantime. Everybody be safe out there and happy trading.